Giannis Antetokounmpo was a mystery when the Bucks drafted him 15th in 2013. He came in looking like Jack Skellington, and over the past 7 years, he's transformed into Jack LaLanne. Think you know the name, don't rack your brain. In that time, Antetokounmpo has become one of the most physically dominant players in basketball, and he's spearheading a Bucks team that's posted the best regular season record in the NBA for the second year in a row. So what is it about the Bucks that's so confounding for opponents? Are they destined to be the cheese standing alone when the bubble has wrapped? Much is made of Giannis' finishing ability, and that's understandable. He often looks like an older brother punishing his younger siblings on a Nerf hoop. The ease with which he posterizes all creatures, great and small, is ridiculous. Now, don't get me wrong, dunks are fun, but Giannis' athleticism is much more nuanced than that. Aside from simply being tall and long, he's 6'11" with a 7'3" wingspan, Giannis also wields truly phenomenal flexibility and balance. That is, in his shoulders, arms, hips, and legs, he can comfortably adjust to the angles presented to him. Now, we've had plenty of big players over the years that were lean, nimble, and fluid athletes. Hakeem Olajuwon immediately comes to mind. Kevin Garnett, the younger iterations of Shaq. But Shaq never wiggled with the ball in his hands like this. Giannis is not only the greatest driving front court player of all time, he's one of the best driving players ever at any position, period. Because of that, it's hardly a secret that Giannis wants to get to the rim. Nearly 60% of his attempts were at the basket, where he shot 69.5%. Stopping him from getting there is one of the biggest challenges in the game. That's because he's like a transformer with the ball in his hands. He's a shapeshifter. That elasticity allows Giannis to morph into whatever form the situation calls for. And when it comes to getting from point A to point B, a lot of times that just means getting low. If an on-ball defender is smaller than him, he can lower his shoulders and hips to keep his dribble protected. For bigs, it's much harder to put their length to use because Giannis is so good at stretching out his lower half to create lateral misdirection. This play is a great example. PJ Tucker is 6'5" and he is down in a stance, but Giannis lowers himself to eye level, takes a huge left-footed step, and then fully cooks him by getting his shoulder under Tucker's. The ball skills make these physical gifts functional in the game setting, and although he showed these abilities early on, when Jason Kidd proclaimed in 2016 that Giannis would shoulder the point guard duty for the Bucks, I stopped for a moment and I wondered if a drink had spilled onto his brain. What few of us realized, myself included, was just how much the NBA was about to change. As we know, downhill pressure and three-point shooting live in a beautiful balance, and when it comes to relentless downhill scoring, it doesn't get much better than Giannis Antetokounmpo. He was tailor-made for this era, and the Bucks relish that fact in his usage. Like pilot fish trailing a great white shark, a force like Antetokounmpo creates a kind of offensive ecosystem that can benefit others, and much of that happens in transition. Pre-bubble, Milwaukee logged just over 1,600 transition possessions this season, which was the second highest mark in the NBA. Giannis took part in 463 of those, and at 6'11", he was the ball handler 67.7% of the time. In both possessions and points scored, he's tops in the league. Milwaukee's defensive approach works in harmony with Giannis' strengths. They've been the best paint-protecting team in the league this season, and the more that teams settle away from the rim, the more opportunity that gives Giannis to roll. And the more teams sell out to stop that, the more it feeds their spot-up game. It's a team full of brilliant defenders, and Brook Lopez in particular should take a bow for how much he's improved this year. He's been phenomenal. Giannis is the biggest player in this sequence, and yet he zooms straight into a group of 4 players, hitting Bam Adebayo with a full-speed in-and-out dribble to create a lane for himself to take off. Luckily for the Bucks, as relentless as he is, Giannis is also a very capable passer. I wouldn't say that he's elite. He doesn't manipulate pressure the way the very best playmakers do. He leans scoring and he reacts to the avenues that open up as a result. And when you score and you draw fouls like Giannis does, that's usually plenty. He's surrounded by quality shooters, and 194 of his 354 assists this season were for threes. In transition and even in the half court, the more frequently that Giannis recognizes potential dead-end drives and gives it up early, the harder it gets to organize your efforts to stop him. And this is when Milwaukee is at their best. Sun Tzu's Art of War tells us that an army without provisions is lost. For the Bucks, that means disrupting Giannis's momentum, limiting their easy offense in the paint, and daring their other modes of offense to come into play. This is where the term Giannis wall gets thrown around a lot. And that means creating a cluster of 3-ish players in the middle of the floor that are difficult to penetrate through or throw over the top of. The best defensive teams set it up between the top of the key and the foul line. But it's got to be fluid and it's got to be on time. Tyler Hero is late to the scene here and Giannis pounces. Now, if you don't make shots, this can be tough. Milwaukee's chokehold will just get tighter and tighter, and that wall will have holes. Unless he chooses to go full Zidane every time out, there is no fully stopping Giannis. Some players bother him more than others, but stifling him enough to disrupt Milwaukee's offense is too tough of a task for one person. It takes a village with certain types of villagers. By committee, you've got to mirror Giannis's strengths as best as you can and keep him guessing. That means multiple players with mobile size both on the wing and in the front court. Just being big is not good enough. To top it all off, those players are going to need to be positionally intelligent, not just as individuals, but collectively. Something that the Bucks have working in their favor is that in a one-off scenario, on a random night on the NBA schedule, stopping the novelty of their play style is tough to do. It's a sign of their success, but no team ran fewer late-clock offensive possessions this year than Milwaukee. However, deep in the season, when smart, talented teams have time to explore some trial and error, things can change. It's a painful subject in Cream City, but Toronto may have created a blueprint for that in the 2019 Eastern Conference Finals. It should also be noted, that blueprint was executed by one of the best team defensive units of all time last season in the playoffs. One-on-one, effectively bothering Giannis's live dribble and passing angles while also absorbing his contact is something that only a select few can do. Watch Kawhi push Giannis's path to the left, all while maintaining his balance and then being long enough to contest the attempt. Still, that's not always enough, and it's hard to do that more than a couple times a game. Very often it's about hoping that he'll pursue those dead ends, deflate his own momentum, and then shrink his vantage point. That's where savvy helpers with size, like Marc Gasol or Serge Ibaka, come in handy. If Milwaukee fails to cut down the nets this season, they might find themselves asking a depressing question.
What if this is as good as it gets?
If the supporting cast can't punish teams that drop into gaps to neutralize Giannis, it might be. The Bucks are philosophically the same as a year ago, but they improved some personnel and they added some offensive wrinkles. Chris Middleton has had the ball in his hands more, and he's had the best season of his career. The addition of Wes Matthews has relieved Middleton defensively on the ball and has added some great shooting. Marvin Williams brings some great post offense and spots up well. Kyle Korver does Kyle Korver things. And DiVincenzo and Connaughton are dependable in controlled doses. The year-over-year progression for Giannis has been astounding. Carrying the highest usage rate in the NBA, he's been an absolute terror on both ends of the floor. He has a damn near secretariat level lead in player impact plus minus, and he set a career high in box plus minus. Should he, rightfully I might add, win the MVP, he'll be the third player ever to win that award twice by age 25. Only Kareem and LeBron have done that. But is this his peak? And if not, where could he go from here? Where might he and or the Bucks be forced to go from here? Expanded face-up and post-scoring have to be the next frontier for Antetokounmpo for a couple of reasons. First, aside from Bob Costas, none of us are 25 forever. You simply have to add to the bag to age gracefully in the NBA. Second, it's the logical area where he can build out his playmaking chops. It won't be easy, but the more he grows in those areas, the wider those playmaking windows will get. It's hard to know how much the face-up game will improve. He's upped his attempts efficiently this season, but coaches likely still pump their fist even when he makes a three. It likely means that he'll be susceptible to taking more. Players like Antetokounmpo can elevate any context, but there's a point where dependable counters are required even for the best of the best. Both Michael Jordan and LeBron James had similar experiences. At about 25 years old, they seemed to hit the limit for how much scoring and playmaking they could efficiently carry before they needed some high-quality help to surround them. Uncoincidentally, That's also when they won their first titles. Giannis is a different type of player, but I do have this feeling in the pit of my stomach that his script could play out the same way. For that script to flip, and for the Bucks to win their first title since the days of the Big O and Kareem, the help is going to need to be great. In the language of the Menominee Indian tribe, Milwaukee means some misfortune happens. If you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, that interpretation could easily be seen as bleak and cynical. But in most cases, I think it's actually a nice bit of wisdom. Yeah, misfortune can and does happen. But when you learn from the hard times that come your way, it can pave the way to glorious times ahead. The Bucks have certainly grown. Now it's time to see if the glorious times are ahead. Let me know if you agree.